It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the University Canada head track and field Coach Vicky Croley. How are you doing today?
Great, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college track and field?
Sure. It was a little bit of a long process and it was many years ago. But going into university, I was in a physical education program, and I thought wanted to be a high school phys ed teacher. And I was a competitive university athlete myself. And in my fourth year university, I had an injury, didn't allow me to be able to compete that year. And my head coach at the time was a woman who was an incredible mentor and role model to me, Sue Summers at the time. And she had asked me if I could help coach, because she was just trying to fill the void of me being an injured athlete and being really disappointed because it was my final year. So I started coaching the first and second year hurdlers on the McMaster University team. And I really enjoyed it. And also at that time, I was thinking I was going to apply for a master's in coaching, but also education to become a teacher. And so my experience just was very positive and kicked off well. And I knew that I wanted to coach. That's kind of how the thought started. And then I did have an opportunity to teach for a couple of years, but I continued to coach with the high school and club, and also at McMaster University once I was graduated and teaching in the city that the university is located in. And then a couple years later, my former head coach had since moved to York University, where she was the head coach, and she was going on maternity leave. And I was just getting my husband, currently, and we were just getting married, and we had made a decision that we were going to move closer to the Toronto area where York University is located. And Sue had asked me if I'd be interested in filling in for her while she went on maternity leave. So I kind of jumped into a head coaching role at York University, which is quite a large university in Canada. And then Sue came back, and I was an assistant to her and did a few other things as well. But that's kind of how I got started, and I haven't left the profession.
Of course, what was that like competing as an athlete in hurdling and long jumping?
Yeah, I really enjoyed, as I had mentioned in high school. Well, I didn't really mention this, but in high school, I was a multi-sport athlete. I played basketball, volleyball, ran track and field. And after my grade 9 year, I'd reached out to a club coach to ask if I could join the club. And I did that and became, a fairly high level high school student athlete at the time, and also competed for the Mississauga Track Club and also the University of Toronto Track and Field Club throughout high school, and then leading to university. So you had the kind of develop the passion for the sport. And I was hoping to continue that at university. And I was, pleased to know that Sue, who was the head coach at McMaster University, was really well respected and a good up and coming young coach at the time. So I was excited to go to university and to be able to be on the track and field team under Sue's leadership. And then I just, it was fun. You had training partners in both of those events, the hurdles and the jumps. And I also ran relays and really enjoyed that aspect of things. And, the one thing about track and field is it is an individual sport, but when it's in a university setting, it's like a team. So I enjoyed being kind of part of the team aspect.
How was your experience like getting to coach on the Team Canada track and field and getting to coach Olympian?
Well, that's probably one of the ultimate highs in coaching. To be able to coach on a national team. Yeah, being able to coach on a national team certainly is an honor to be able to, represent your country as a coach. And really, you're working with the athletes that are on the team at the time, but they're not necessarily your personal athletes. So to connect with their personal coaches and find out what their athletes need in a high level national team environment, and then just helping kind of put that plan and process for them and facilitate so they are healthy and have a positive experience I really like that role. And then you had also asked about, coaching the Olympic level, and I have been lucky enough to be a personal coach. Well, not only Damian Warner, but also Catherine Von Mills, who was a two-time Olympian in the heptathlon. So to be able to be their personal coach, so you've developed and worked with them for several years leading up to a national team or an Olympics, and go there with them, a great experience, because the Olympics is the highest level of any national team that I've coached on. It's been the most stressful as well. So you try to manage that stress so the athletes, don't necessarily aren't impacted by it, and they have positive performances. And I would say even in Rio 2016 with Damian, it was stressful. I mean, he was going after a gold medal and competing against the world record holder, Ashton Eaton. So we knew it was a tall order to fill. And then Kevin Meyer comes in, has the meet of his life, kind of impacted Damian not reaching his goals, and he ended up with the bronze medal. But it was definitely stressful throughout those 2 days, not really leading up to those 2 days, but the actual 2 days of competition, because of the high expectations that he had on himself, that his coaching team had for him. And, sport doesn't always go 100% the way that coaches and athletes would like. And you just have to kind of deal with what you're faced with and hopefully come out with a positive experience.
What were some of your accomplishments as an assistant coach for York University?
Oh, well, actually, when I was at York, we had a number of outstanding athletes. One was an Olympian. It was a very small women's team, but really high quality. And we ended up winning a national title with 5 women, which to this day, I don't think has ever happened. And I mean, we had athletes that, were competing in the sprints, horizontal jumps, hurdles, and then we had a couple distance runners. But it just meant that they would also compete on our relays, and it was just a incredible group of young women that won that championship. So that was one thing that I remember. As you know, Brandon, that was a long time ago. So it's you remember the championships, but I also remember the individuals. And our sport isn't as much about winning the championships. It's about having athletes have overall positive experiences, but also achieving personal bests. And it just seemed things that particular year really did align, and all of our athletes kind of built off each other's performances and did really well, and they came away with the team title.
What was your experience like coming to Western University in Canada to become the head coach for the first time in your coaching career?
Yeah, I was, so when I was coaching at York, I was there for 4 years. And as I've mentioned, Sue was an incredible role model and mentor for me. And it was a really ideal coaching situation. We shared an office. We sometimes got work done in the office, but we really enjoyed, each other's friendship. And I learned a lot from Sue. And I would probably always defer to her in making some decisions early in my career. And when the job at Western was advertised, it was head coach of the women's track team. And my husband and I were actually looking to maybe move away from Toronto because he's from a smaller city. And, we were just looking at, would this be an opportunity? And I remember, mentioning it to him, and he said, yes, please apply, and let's just see what happens. So, I also recall driving onto the Western campus for my interview, and I really had a great feel for the university itself, the campus. It just felt really welcoming. And I was just, went through that interview process and was lucky to be offered the job. And I mean, also at that time in my life, I had just had my first child. So my daughter, Caitlin, at the time was only a couple months old when I accepted the job. And then we were moving into this position. And I think she was 8 months old at the time. So to have, I mean, it was good. I think I was ready for a head coaching role, and needed to be in a higher kind of leadership role where I could, make my own decisions as opposed to deferring to, as I said, my own former coach for so many years.
How was that feeling like when you did get your head coaching job
Okay.
for the first time and you got to make those decisions and those final decisions?
Yeah, I would say it was probably, like, if I look back to, that was 30 years ago, it was probably scary, a little bit scary at the time. I know my first year, so in most track and field programs, we run the program as a co-ed team. So we did have a head coach of the men's team, and I was the head coach of the women's team. But our athletes trained together with their different event group coaches. So I was coming into a situation where I was working with the men's coach, and he was very established. At that time, he had probably been coaching, for 30 years himself. So I think, and my first year, I probably did a lot of listening to him making some decisions to really feel out and to decide how I wanted to, the direction that I wanted our program to go in. So I think that first year I probably took a little bit of a step back. Certainly I made decisions, but I worked with some of the assistant coaches that were already in place. Most of those coaches, because I was coming to a new city as well and into a pretty established program. So I wanted to kind of just fit into that program and then make it my own, maybe the next 2 or 3 years following that first year, which I think I went on and did.
Of course, personally for you, what was it like getting inducted into the Hall of Fame as a player and as a coach?
Well, it's always an incredible honor to be recognized. And I think when I was first recognized by McMaster University, I didn't think that I was worthy of being inducted into their Hall of Fame, to be honest with you. And I think, I feel like I was a good university athlete, but I didn't go beyond the university level. So I think, because after I graduated as an athlete and became coaching, like a successful coach so early, that ended up adding to kind of my nomination for the McMaster Sports Hall of Fame. So it was a combination of my, coaching achievements at a young age, and coupled with being a successful university athlete. So I as I said, I don't think I was really, I felt like I wasn't quite worthy of that induction as just an athlete. But when you looked at some of my coaching and added to that, then that was great. But moving on to being inducted into Western Sports Hall of Fame, that was, I think, about 10 or 15 years into my coaching experience at Western. I was incredibly honored. I've been lucky to have had good coaches around me, a good group of mentor assistant coaches that helped develop our program. And, I was successful in, maybe recruiting some top athletes. That it's the athletes that make the coaches look good. Ultimately, though, I was very honored and thankful to the number of people that helped me develop into a coach that would receive such an honor, such as my as I mentioned, my assistant coaches, my mentors and former coaches, and my family, my parents being so supportive throughout my career, and then my husband and my kids that allowed me to really feel my passion for coaching. Because that's ultimately, yes, it's a job for me, but how lucky am I? This is my passion as well. And they've supported that, and it hasn't always been easy for them. And we have all kind of made sacrifices, but they've made sacrifices probably more than I have to allow me to be a coach and to travel and to be away from them at certain times of the year.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've built for the track and field program for Western University?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say over the years, I mentioned this before, that we are a sport. It's an individual sport. But at the university level, we are a team. We compete as a team. You need to rely on your teammates, especially when things aren't necessarily going well, okay? You need, if an athlete has an injury or, has a poor performance, that's when they need their teammates to support them, to kind of get them through. They need to know that they're not in this on their own. And that's been a huge part of the culture that I've tried to develop well at Western. And I also want to be able to provide our student athletes, not only with a quality education and a very successful career as an athlete, where they have the tools in place to develop to the best of their athletic ability, but also to provide them with some leadership opportunities and volunteer work and community work that helps, and to connect them with mentors themselves, so they can go on and graduate from our program. And those mentors, could be assistant coaches, but they could also be alumni, and just to kind of build like a lifelong experience with our program.
How has it been like, obviously, coaching track and field indoors, and what competitions do you have indoors versus outdoors?
Yeah, so, but partly because of our climate, and it's the same in some of in the US states where they need to have an indoor facility. But we start our season in September, training outdoors. We move indoors usually around the beginning of November for training. We'll have two or three competitions maybe before the first term is up. We're on a 2-term, which is a little bit different than some NCAA schools. So our first term ends the end of December. Then when we come back and start our second term, we'll usually try to kick off the new year with a warm weather training camp to kind of do some team building and obviously training, and then we compete almost every weekend up until mid-March. So the end of February, we would have our Ontario University or our conference championships. And then in the second weekend in March, we would have our U Sports, which is our university national championships. Then our university season is done. Our athletes will typically take a couple weeks off, and then we'll start training for the spring and summer outdoor season. So it allows our athletes here in Canada to have a very competitive university season, but then those top athletes, well, not only the top athletes, I mean, in order to be a university athlete on our team and to, compete at the highest level and to try to win a championship at either the conference or national university championships, our athletes need to be training and competing year round. But that spring and summer is an opportunity to, go to our provincial championships, to go to our national championships, to possibly make a national team. So if it's World U20 team or a Pan American Games, whatever it might be FISU, which is the World University Games. So whatever level the athlete can maybe strive to make, maybe it's only going to the national championships, which is fine. So they compete, they train the best that they can in a summer experience. Once that season is done, then they'll have a transition phase of their training where they can take some time off, and then we start up again with our university season.
Of course, what does the recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to play college track and field?
Yeah, well, first of all, as a head coach, and I have a full-time assistant head coach as well, who really helps with recruiting. We go to, provincial, national championships and actually see athletes compete. We'll identify, the athletes that we would like in our program. In our sport, where you can see an athlete's results, we can also look at just rankings. If I haven't actually seen that athlete compete, but I know that they have, jumped or thrown or ran a certain time or distance, that they would be, at a high level and someone that we might want to pursue further within our program. So, however it might be, we would connect with that athlete. It might be through, their club coach. It might be through, if we can get their contact information, or if we can see them at our provincial championships and talk to them. So we would want to have a conversation first, and then we would possibly invite them for a visit. On that visit, if someone's coming in for a day, so if they're fairly local, they can come in for a day visit, and they would go for a campus tour, which would include residents, maybe meet with someone in the program that they're interested in, attend a class, and then they would meet with our coaches and student athletes, maybe our captains or event group captain, just to get more information about our program. And then they would come and watch our practice, and then we would kind of follow up with them after that visit. If it's someone that's coming in from out of province and we're flying them in, then they would spend, 2 days, a weekend, and then we would just fill up their day with all the things I mentioned, plus a few other, maybe activities. Like actually, I have a recruit that's coming in the weekend of our National Football Championships, which is the Vanier Cup, and we are hosting here at Western. So I'm hoping our football team will be in those championships, and that'll be a really fun environment for him to experience. So yeah. So we get them in for a visit, and then we just continue to follow up with them after. And we are able to offer some scholarship money. It's not, or some athletic scholarship money. So we let them know, if we can offer them an athletic scholarship, or how the academic scholarship process works for them. And as I said, the big key is just to follow up with them after and see if they had a good feel when they came for the visit. And I think it's most important for them, to connect with the coach that they're going to be working with in particular. And if they've got that good connection, then let them know that we want them here. And hopefully Western is a good place for them to continue their life kind of as a student athlete.
What's that like, obviously seeing those recruits fall in love with the campus and then commit and then perform in their freshman year and even go on to their senior year? Yeah,
you know what, Brandon, that is such a great question, because their life at Western does begin during the recruiting process. For most of them, for those athletes, sometimes we get lucky and we get outstanding walk-ons, but to connect with an athlete on their visit and even leading up to the visit, and then for an athlete, not even for myself, but for the event group coach, they feel if that athlete, if they really liked the athlete, like if our assistant coach really, connected, and then the athlete chooses another school, we understand that, but it does hurt, particularly if we wanted that athlete to come to Western. So let's say, okay, the athlete decides to come after going through, because we're trying to sell to them to come to Western. So it is a bit of, we're being ourselves, but it takes a lot out of us because we really care and we want to show the athlete that we care and that we will provide them with the best experience possible for them and look after them when they're here at Western. So we go through that process. Yes, they come. Then in first year, we do need to have check-ins, right, with them to make sure not only at the track, but away from the track to make sure that they're doing okay and having a good, positive experience. And that's what's really important, right? And that's what a large part of my job is. It's not just going to the track to coach. It's connecting with these student athletes away from the track to make sure everything is okay and that we have support systems in place for them. And then, yes, usually you get through first year, they're usually okay, but then we just continue to develop and give them other leadership opportunities, and we become quite close to them. It's not like we're a professor that's teaching a student for one class. We could potentially work with these athletes for 5 years. I mean, after athletes have graduated, I've coached some athletes for as long as 11 years in total, university and then as a post-collegiate athlete. So there is certainly a sense of pride when that athlete does graduate from your program and the university.
What advice would you give those future college athletes looking to compete on the college level?
Yeah, the future, I would say, first of all, make sure that the schools that you look at have the academic program that you're interested in. So sometimes high school students don't really know what they want to do. So they need to take some time and reflect at what they might want to do academically. So I would say that that's kind of number one. And, if you haven't been recruited, there are so many, just know that there are so many track and field athletes in high school across Canada, the US, that not every good program might notice you, but don't take that personally. If you're interested in that school, reach out to the head coach, okay? And tell them what I want to see is I want to see what their results are. So their personal best, their season's best. And if you can send them video, then I'll look at that video. So, and then if you hear back from the coach, okay, like in most cases, I try to reply to everybody, but we do get a lot of requests. But if you hear back from the coach, they will tell you if they're interested or not. And then they'll get the process going. But don't be afraid as a high school student that wants to do college sport to reach out to the coach. But you don't necessarily have to tell them all the good leadership things about you initially, because ultimately the coach is going to want you to be at a certain level performance-wise. Then all those other things are important, and we can learn about those things on a recruiting visit.
What advice would you give those college athletes that are looking to compete nationally, whether it's for the U.S. track or the Canada track and field?
Yeah, so as it results to or as it applies to maybe being part of a university program, first find out that if your university coach is going to be a coach that can coach you during like the summer once the season is done, and that they will take into consideration those goals that you might have as a national team athlete, not just as a university or NCAA championship athlete. Okay, so if you've got goals beyond, you need to talk to those coaches of the programs that you're going to see that your goals, beyond university, even if it's while you're a university student, will be met. Because I have seen that athletes that compete indoors, let's say a distance athlete that does cross country, an indoor track season, an outdoor university track season, how are they going to compete after after those 3 seasons and do well? Right? So that's something that's definitely a conversation to have if you're at that level.
What advice would you give those future college coaches looking to get started?
I would definitely say find a college coach that, well, maybe even if it was your own college coach, or you need mentors in your program, on your side. You need to connect with other college coaches to kind of pick their brain, right? So, and to be noticed if positions become available at their colleges or universities. So it's really just connecting with people, be involved in mentorship programs. Also further, make sure you have, if you want to coach at a college or university level, you need to have a college or a college degree, okay? Or you can also improve your coaching education to the highest level possible.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media, along with Western University's program at? Where can my listeners find Western University's Canada track and field program at on social media along with you?
Yeah, probably the best place would be on Instagram, Western Mustangs TFXC. So Western Mustangs track and field cross country. And just I'm on Instagram as Vicky Croley, VICKIE CROLEY.
Thank you again, Coach Vicky Croley, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at Western University for Canada.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brandon, and have a great rest of your day, and good luck with your show.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Vicky Croley, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.